So we're going to get into who and what shadow people are, some of the legends back behind them, the different types of shadow people, and the like. Welcome to Mike's Morning Mug. We're doing something a little bit different today. As you can see, I have a slideshow up on shadow people. And so I'm going to be showing you a presentation. So why am I doing this for this morning mug? Well, it's because I'm going to be showing this very presentation this coming weekend. And so I thought I would share it with those people that are not going to be there at the event for the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia. So I really want to thank Angel May for inviting me out to that. I'm going to be set up there with all of my books, and then I'm going to be speaking about shadow people. So it's a great historic location. I recommend it to anybody. It's a old hotel right there along the train line. They used it as a Civil War hospital. A lot of great history right there in that area. So go check out Exchange Hotel. So shadow people. Now, I've talked about shadow people before in the past, and this is a culmination of a lot of that information that I've put together, plus a couple of new things that I have added in there as well. So let's go ahead and start, and this is just kind of the introductory screen. So there's a reason why I end up talking a lot about shadow people, and if you've been following me for a long time now and have seen the other videos on shadow people, and if you've listened to the interviews that I have given about this, you kind of know my story. But for those that don't, my first paranormal experience, or at least one of the first, and maybe one that predates that, but it's a little hazy as to whether or not it was something that paranormal. But in this particular case with the shadow person, my very first paranormal experience was I woke up in the middle of the night and saw this figure standing in the corner of my bedroom. This is a drawing by Adam Tillery, and he's pretty darn accurate as to the setup of my bedroom, how I saw the shadow person. A couple, minor details. The window's a little different, the closet door is a little different, but that's where it was. It was a sliding closet door, and that's where the window was. And I did, when I woke up, saw this humanoid type shadow figure standing in the corner of my bedroom. And I was a kid. I was like 8 or 9 years old. I was terrified, very scared at seeing this person standing there. Just very dark and ominous. And so I tried to scream, couldn't, of course, because I was just that scared. And it did the strangest, oddest thing from a lot of other shadow people stories that I hear. And what happened was this shadow person actually approached me and crossed my arms across my body. And then it ran off down the hall and into the linen closet. Very strange behavior indeed, but why it ran into the linen closet, I don't know. What it was doing, trying to cross my arms, I don't know. Of course, I immediately got up at that point after I went into the linen closet, found my voice. I was yelling and screaming at my parents that this thing had been in my room. They told me that I just had a bad dream, said that I could lay down with them, all the things that good parents are supposed to do. But to this day, I know that I truly saw this shadow person, and I was wide awake for it, and all of that. Now, I've had some interesting feedback over the past maybe year and a half from a number of people that made me rethink the whole crossing of the arms thing. And that is, a few people have suggested to me that perhaps this thing wasn't trying to be harmful, but for whatever strange reason, maybe it saw me as being dead, and so it was crossing my arms as a burial pose. Now, why it ran off down the hall into the linen closet, I don't know. Maybe it realized after touching me that I was actually alive, and it got scared and ran off down the hall. I know that may be a little bit hard to believe, considering some of the preconceptions that a lot of people have about shadow people. So we're going to get into those sorts of things as to who and what shadow people are, some of the legends back behind them, the different types of shadow people, and the like. So there's a lot of interesting information. And we'll also get into sleep paralysis as well. This instance here, I can say, was not sleep paralysis, obviously, because my arms are moving. My head was moving as I was watching it run down the hall. I was moving. My mouth opened to try to scream, just nothing came out. So No sleep paralysis here, and we'll get into that a little bit as we go along. So we'll get into, like I said, types of shadow people. First one, the humanoid figure, which I've really just kind of described, looks like a person, but everything is just black. People say that, they range about, about 6 feet tall, maybe even a little taller. I don't know how they come to those sorts of numbers, because it's not like, we're standing next to a shadow person and taking measurements. But that's kind of the estimate that people give, I guess, maybe based on the height near the wall of where they may have seen the shadow person. If you want to say the shadow person that encountered me was 6 feet tall, I wouldn't argue with you. It just seemed to me like a normal size person. So I was like 8 or 9 years old, so to me it's going to seem a little taller anyway, even if it was like average adult size height. It's going to seem taller. Maybe it was 6 feet tall. I don't know. No way for me to really know. Just, to me, normal size humanoid figure, just everything black. Pretty much like the drawing that Adam had created. Then there's the Hat Man. Now this is the one that, or one of the couple ones that people are said to fear. Usually the stories associated with the Hat Man are ones that are generally more on the scary side. And basically he's like the humanoid figure, except he's wearing a hat. Sometimes he's reported having a duster, and the hat is generally like a fedora type hat. So basically he almost looks like I do when I get up in my trench coat and fedora. Almost like your PI from the 1940s, or maybe something like Rorschach from Watchmen or something like that. So, but this guy is claimed to be feared. I've encountered a lot of shadow people in different types of shadows over the years. I have not yet encountered the Hat Man. So people who have said that this is actually a fairly scary guy. I don't know personally whether or not he is, but the stories that we hear about, they say this is a negative one. Then there's the hooded figure, or the mist. The hooded figure, again, is another creepy one, a little bit more on the negative side, or the mist. Now, I have actually seen the mist before, which is supposed to be related to the hooded figure. Again, another type of negative type shadow person, as people claim it is. And I'll tell the story of the mist that I saw. This is for the episode of The Haunted Monster in the Closet. This is actually a deleted scene out of Monster in the Closet. They didn't show this part, but little backstory on the house and what was going on here. This was in Edmond, Oklahoma, and the girl, Taliesin, who was being terrified. Everybody had been seeing different things around the house and had been experiencing different things over the years. Shadow people were definitely some of the things that they had reported, multiple family members. Taliesin specifically was seeing something with red eyes in the closet. We'll get to Mr. Red Eyes here in a little bit. What I saw was a little bit different. So we were investigating the house. We investigated there probably 5 or 6 times before we filmed for the episode. During this particular piece of filming, the cat, Jasmine, was getting all stirred up, all riled up, was getting real jittery, kind of running back and forth between the living room area, the kitchen, the little dinette area, all of that. And so I started following the cat to see what was going on, what was bothering it. And I followed it back to where you can see here by the bedrooms, and where Jasmine is looking in is into Taliesin's bedroom. So I follow Jasmine over to there and look in the bedroom, and I see in the middle of the room a large black mass. And I would basically equate this to the mist that is reported by a lot of people. Jasmine obviously also saw, because she stopped right there, looked in, and then took off around the door and under the couch. So it got out of there. I stood there and watched it. I was getting my camera out, and I watched this large black mass just dissipate into the air. I did snap a photograph, didn't get anything on the photograph. So it all comes down to a personal experience, an eyewitness report of watching this large black mass, which we'll have to equate as a mist, just because of the way it dissipated. It just kind of slowly faded out. So, no eyes, no shape, no figure. You could say it was round. You could say it was, almost like a blob sort of, but it didn't really have like a gelatinous type of look to it. It was just dark and big, and it blocked out that whole middle part of the bedroom, and then it just slowly faded away. So that's my encounter with the mist, and that is supposed to be related to the hooded figure. So Mr. Red Eyes. Now this is really related to the entity that Taliesin was experiencing in the closet. I have not personally seen Mr. Red Eyes, and even though we investigated there 5 or 6 times, we never actually did during those investigations see this shadow person, although she had reported seeing it many times. So now this is supposed to be a very negative entity, again with the red eyes. When we did that investigation there in Edmond, our occult specialist and Carl Johnson, who was there, demonologist Carl Johnson, the two of those kind of collaborated together to surmise that this red-eyed entity was a wraith, something that had once been a human and was now a malevolent spirit. So that's what they theorized. Maybe not. I'm going to get a little bit into later on what I believe shadow people are. There are a number of people who believe that shadow people had once been humans, had been living on this earth, and there's other people that believe there's something else. So Mr. Red Eyes is generally considered something negative. Whether or not he was human in form, if he was human in form and is a malevolent spirit like that, well, very could fall into the classification of wraith. But in this case, we're just chalking him up as a shadow person, much like a humanoid figure, but having those red eyes, of course, donating something malevolent or evil. Now here's where we start getting to more of the sleep paralysis theories and legends, and that comes down to the Old Hag. And basically what people report about the Old Hag is they wake up in the middle of the night and they can't move, and they feel as if somebody is sitting on their chest. Sometimes they actually do report that they see somebody sitting on their chest, and in many cases this is a nasty looking, foul old woman, usually small in stature, wiry, wispy white hair. This depiction is more of a little creature, which sometimes it's reported like that as well, but sometimes not seen either, where they just wake up and they can't move and they feel like something is sitting on their chest. And so this is called Old Hag syndrome, and that has been related to sleep paralysis, and we will get into sleep paralysis here in a minute as well. So with the Old Hag, now this is, as you can see, in relation to the painting is called The Nightmare, okay, and you actually see the black horse there, the mare, and then the hag sitting on the chest of the person who is asleep. And so we're going to get into a little bit of these different legends. Now, what I find interesting about Old Hag syndrome is how so many cultures across the world have the similar, almost identical story, maybe with different variations, of an explanation for this waking in the middle of the night and feeling as if somebody's sitting on your chest, or even seeing somebody sitting on your chest. Worldwide, over millennia, all these different cultures reporting this phenomenon and having a very similar story for it. So let's take a look at some of those. So I'm going to have to, you're looking over here, I'm going to have to look this way. This is going to be a little awkward here for the video, but it is what it is. So Scandinavia, the mare, like we saw the mare. Iceland, mara. So, similar spellings, words. They're referring again to the nightmare, but this is their word basically for the old hag and what have you. Gullah lore talks about hag-ridden. There's the old slang terms where you wake up in the middle of the night, or wake up after a rough night, and you're looking worn and weary, and so they say that you look hag-ridden, or you've been riding the hag, that sort of thing. Well, that all is from these legends of the old woman sitting on your chest, that you were having a rough night because you woke up and she's sitting on your chest and just destroyed your sleep. Newfoundland also refers to it again as the old hag. So let's get into some other cultures here. So Fiji calls it Kana Tavoro, eaten by a demon. So I know that sounds a little bit different, but basically, their demon was this, little creature, again, sitting on your chest. This is their way of explaining, sleep paralysis in the middle of the night and waking like that. Greece explained it as Moro, Varanus, and Varitnus, demons that steal. I put speech. I need to. See, it's great that we're doing this little presentation. Not demons that steal speech. Demons that steal sleep. Okay, so a little typo that comes out in the online presentation of this. So, sorry. I'll fix that typo though. So they explained it by actual named demons in their folklore. Thailand calls it Phaim, witch riding. So now they've donated the old hag as an actual witch. Sardinia, I will try not to butcher the name, Amutadori, which is a chest-sitting ghoul. And so that was very similar to what we were seeing in that painting, was that little ghoulish type creature sitting on the chest. I mean, that particular painting doesn't really look like an old hag, an old woman. It looks more like a ghoul, but it really fits cross-culturally, as you can see. Vietnam is Bong Day, held down by a shadow. See, now it's actually referring back to shadow people here, where it's not just a little old lady or old hag or an old ghoul. Now it's going right back to shadow people. And so this is how it's all related and fitting in together. Latvia is called Liet Luvins, soul of someone who's been killed. So the legend here is that the sleep paralysis, the soul, the person that is holding you down, that is pressing upon you, is the soul of somebody who's been killed. Not somebody who's like quietly passed away in their sleep, but it could have been like an accident. Whether it was you could have fallen off a cliff. It could have been somebody who was killed during a battle, somebody who was killed not by anything like a real natural convention, somebody who was killed by some exterior means. Then in Sri Lanka we have Amuku Pe, that's ghost that forces one down. So now we're attributing it to not just a shadow, not a little old lady, not a little ghoul, but a ghost. So a spirit of somebody who has once been on this earth, so as a human being. So that kind of goes back to almost like the soul of someone who's been killed, but this could be anybody that has passed away. Ethiopia is Dukak, holds people down during sleep. So this Dukak is a spirit that basically does this same thing, holding people down during their sleep. Turkey is Karabasan, the dark presser. So this is attributing it to something a little bit more malevolent, and again, pressing down. And then Brazil is Pisadera, which is old hag who steps on the chest. So in this case with Brazil, the hag is not sitting on your chest, but is basically standing on it and pressing it down with its feet. So again, really interesting how all of these different cultures, although all different parts of the world, have explained this phenomenon in a very, very similar fashion. So it tells me that not to take it with a grain of salt. We'll get into sleep paralysis very shortly here, which is basically used as a medical way of explaining what has happened. But to me, it's really telling when all these different cultures have a very, very similar story. I mean, yeah, they all each have their all variations, but they're all very similar in nature as well. So that tells me to pay attention for that when Brazil and Sri Lanka have similar stories going on here. We should be paying attention a lot more closely to that. Another type of shadow is the wisp. Now this is something that I have added here from the previous time that I've done these presentations, because the wisp it's not a full body. It's not like the humanoid figure or the Hat Man or the hooded figure. Maybe a little bit closer to the mist, but again, the mist is related to the hooded figure, and it's very, very solid. Where the wisp, and this is probably a more solid representation of what I'm talking about. But the wisp is like a faint, very translucent, black, almost like a. When I say wisp, I really mean that. It's just small, wispy. Almost like smoke, but you can see that it has some sort of form to it. And, a lot of times they move and dart very quickly. And a couple times that I would say that I have experienced this. One was when I first moved into a house in Ohio. This was when I was 13 years old. We had just moved from Massachusetts to Ohio, and we were unpacking. And I'm pulling things out of boxes and just getting my room set up and whatnot. And out of the corner of my eye, I kept seeing something over by my bedroom door. And I'd turn and I would just see this real quick dark shadow just take off, just real quick, boom, gone. But it was there and then it was gone. You could see it move real quick like that. And this happened a number of different times. I'd be unpacking, I'd see it. Or I'd just be hanging out in my room. This is like the first couple months that we were there. And so I ended up asking my mother about it, if she had been seeing the same thing. And she actually confirmed that, yeah, she also had seen the same thing within the house. So I started calling it Tom, because it was just always over by the door. And, to me, it was, peeping in, so peeping Tom. After a couple months of this, it stopped happening. So I always just chalked it up as to something that was there in the house, was curious as to who we were, deemed that we were okay, and then just went about its own business and didn't pay us any mind after that, gave us no trouble. The second time was this instance. That was at Johnny V's in Muskogee, Oklahoma. This is a restaurant, was a restaurant that is no longer there. And during this investigation, we had mild activity throughout, and this was actually towards the end. And I was kind of doing a last sweep of the ground floor, which contained the kitchen. And as I entered the kitchen through the door, kind of facing this way, I walked in the door here. You see the side door there, okay? As I walked in, I saw this real quick, just wisp, just dart toward this door here. This is a swinging metal door, just flimsy swinging metal door. And as it darted across the room like that, you heard the bang, just bang, of it hitting the door. But the door didn't move at all. I do have the audio clip of that happening, and I tried to take a picture when it happened. Of course, I missed it. This is all I got is, of course, the room. But basically, it went from here, darted across, you heard the bang, and then that was it. So I'll play the audio clip, and hopefully you will be able to hear it here, or maybe I'll have to dub it in the editing. You guys hear that? You guys hear that bang? Yeah, I was back here in the kitchen. Yeah, I thought I saw a shadow move and I was gonna get my camera out to take a picture, and all of a sudden there was that bang. Yeah, so they were out in the restaurant section, of the restaurant, and they heard it all, but nobody saw anything. Again, the door didn't move, and I wasn't quick enough to get my camera out. But it was really, again, just that faint wisp, almost like smoke, but it had form, and it was perpendicular and narrow, and just boom, it just quickly took off toward that door, and then it was gone. But you heard it bang into the door, even though I guess it didn't have enough mass to actually move the door. Really, really interesting. But that is what I am calling the Wisp. And then another one that I've added to this updated presentation is the crawler. Now, with the crawler, people have seen a crawling type creature in a number of different fashions. I've heard of them, like walking up the stairs in a crab-like fashion, or even on the ground like a crab-like fashion. This one was more like that, but along the ceiling. This is an example of a photo that I grabbed off the internet to kind of depict what I'm talking about, because I really don't have a good photograph of the one crawler that I've experienced. But basically, these, like the term that we're calling it, a crawler, almost crab-like on all fours, but they're not necessarily relegated to the ground. Like in this case here, you can see it up near the ceiling, and they can do that, up along the walls, up along the ceiling, and what have you. And where we experienced this was at Black Bear Church. Now this was featured in my ghost story, and what happened here. This orb is not a crawler. That's an illuminated ball of light. Or we'll go into orbs, the difference between orbs and illuminated balls of light another time. It's a whole other discussion. But I wanted to show you that, okay, this is Black Bear Church. This is what we're talking about. Now, the crawler in many cases had been reported crawling along the ceiling, the roof line here. The roof used to actually be in place here, which I've never actually seen the roof in place at Black Bear Church. But people who investigated there before I talked about the crawler crawling along the roof, or along the ceiling lines here. Where we saw it was in the basement, in this room here, which you get to through the stairs over here. So you go downstairs, and where we saw it was along the ceiling down here. And then while we were down there investigating, we believe it kicked this soda bottle that was down here, because all of a sudden that went flying across the floor while we were down there. But we generally saw that crawler along the ceiling up here and around the corners. So again, a creature that is on all fours, dark, shadowy in nature. Other people have reported seeing a quote-unquote crawler in different forms. Sometimes it's more of a human form where they could actually see human attributes to it. And that may be an entirely different type of entity altogether, that kind. But this, in relation to shadow people, again, this was a dark, shadowy, no discernible features other than it was black and crawling along the ceiling. This location also has reported through the windows seeing shorter shadow people, dark humanoid type figures, but shorter in nature, more stout and squat. And when I was there a couple times, you could kind of maybe faintly see them out those windows. Other reports have people that I've talked to that have investigated there, again, before I saw them much more pronounced, but apparently they never came into the church. They would just hang around outside. We have a few different theories about that, which you can check in our Black Bear Church Ghosts and Legends video. So now let's get into sleep paralysis, because this is what shadow people are so often attributed to, because a lot of times people wake up in the middle of the night and they see them in, like what happened with me, in the corner of the bedroom. Maybe they see the end of the bed. Some people have said they see them up on the ceiling, wherever, but they can't move. And like me, they couldn't scream, but a lot of people can't move, but they are seeing this entity standing there. And so the medical community has called this sleep paralysis, and that you're at a state in between sleeping and awake, and your brain is still hallucinating, and therefore it creates this image of a figure that your mind is tricked into believing it was some sort of paranormal phenomenon of somebody who's held you down, or somebody that's in your room, and what have you. And so this is their explanation for it. The sleep paralysis is a real thing. And what I will first say about this idea that your mind is still hallucinating, still half awake, half asleep, and is imagining this person in your room. Well, my question back to the medical community is, why is it always a person? Why are you saying that when this happens, you're always imagining a person? If you're between a state of being awake and being asleep, well, a lot of times my mind is dreaming about, there could be a car or a plane in my dream. There could be trees in my dream. There have been times that I've had dreams of being on stage with Motley Crue. So, where's the guitar? So why am I not, when my eyes are opening and I'm caught in this state, between awake and being asleep, why am I not seeing a tree? Why am I not seeing an airplane? Why am I not seeing a car? Why am I not seeing a guitar or an entire audience, or a drum kit? Or it could be, a whole different house surrounding you. It could be ducks and birds. And why is it always a person? I would think that if you're caught in the state between awake and asleep, that whatever you were dreaming of last, you would suddenly see in your room. But you don't. It's always this dark, shadowy entity. So I don't believe that it's this sleep paralysis of being caught between different states of being. I've had real sleep paralysis. I've had twice. I've had real sleep paralysis. And in neither case did I see a dark entity. In fact, I'll describe what it was. So I was sitting down, kind of like this at the time. And I was not in a place where I wanted to be asleep. I needed to be awake, but my body was so exhausted that I basically crashed out right there where I was sitting. But my mind was awake to know that I'm here. I'm awake. I'm awake, but my body, physical body, is asleep. My body was just so exhausted, it wanted to sleep. My brain wanted to stay awake. So I was caught in this really awkward situation where I couldn't see. My entire body was frozen where it was sitting, but yet I'm completely awake and aware of my surroundings. I could hear, other people that were around doing whatever they were doing, and I couldn't see a thing, and I couldn't feel anything. My body was frozen. It was paralyzed right where I was sitting. It was really, really scary because I wasn't sure how I was going to get out of there. I mean, I could breathe, I could hear, I couldn't see, I couldn't feel, I couldn't move. So finally, I got enough going on in my brain that I at least sent some sort of signal down to my toes. To start wiggling my toes a little bit, wiggling my toes a little bit, wiggling my toes a little bit, until finally it moved up my legs and up to the rest of my body, and it just kind of like slowly up until it finally woke up my head. And then I was finally awake. At no time did I ever see a shadow person. There was no humanoid figure standing there. There was no hat man. Nothing. I didn't feel like anything was pressing on me. No sensation like that at all. I just couldn't move. It was actual sleep paralysis. My body was asleep, my mind was awake, there were no shadow people. It was just this very, very, and it was scary because of the fact that I didn't know if I was going to be able to get out of this the first time around. The second time when it happened, I knew because it had happened once before that I could get myself out of it. I was just kind of like, oh crap, here I am again. So in that regard, it was scary. But yeah, there was no hallucinating going on. So yeah, so I beg to differ that waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a shadow person in your room or being pressed on by the old hag or whatever, I don't believe it's what the medical community is trying to tell you is that sleep paralysis, because I have experienced real sleep paralysis, and it's nothing like waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a shadow person in your room. I've experienced both. Shadow people as interdimensional beings. Well, this is what I think they are. And there's a lot of different theories about who or what they are, and I'm not going to sit here and insist that my version's correct, because all of this is theory. Most of what we talk about in the paranormal and supernatural realms are theory, and so my opinion right now is subject to change depending on other information that we get. I believe they're interdimensional beings because of the fact that at no time when I had these interactions with these did it seem like they had any human type qualities, other than the fact that like the humanoid figure that I saw looked like a humanoid figure. That was the only quality it seemed to have. Of being a human. I mean, you think about it, it ran off down into the linen closet. There's nothing in the linen closet but shelves and towels. So it makes no sense to go into there unless it's going somewhere else, to, like I would think, some other dimension. I don't believe these are human spirits that have, passed away and have come back as this shadow. Human spirits that I've interacted with, really have been invisible to me. When I've talked to other people, they actually see parts of an actual real human, or actually see a full human, full body apparition, or they might even see like a leg or an arm or maybe just a head or whatever, but it's still human, wearing clothes and what have you. These are dark and devoid of anything like that, and so these are still very mysterious creatures, and they come in many different forms, that we've already kind of gone over, but they don't have any distinct features amongst themselves to kind of separate them like we would a human, like blue eyes, blonde hair, beard, whatever. They're just all dark. I believe that they come in and out of our world from whatever dimension that they're from. Why they were trying to interact with us, I'm not sure. Why was that one trying to cross my arms? I'm still trying to figure that out. Maybe it was putting me in a burial pose, and if it was, why? Why would it be concerned about how I looked? And it makes you also wonder, how they view us. Did it actually see me as this physical being, or if it's a being on a different dimensional plane, did it see instead my soul? But then again, my soul was alive, so why would it cross my arms into a burial pose if it was putting me into a burial pose? There's a lot of different questions like this, but just given the state that I've experienced these things in, you're talking about the Wisp at Johnny V's. It dashes across the room, seemingly hits a door, makes the sound of the hit, but it doesn't move the door. So if you are looking interdimensionally, did it slam into that door, maybe make that door open in a different dimension? But in our dimension, we only heard the sound of it and didn't actually see it, because it was in a different plane of existence that the door was actually slammed into and opened. So why they crossed planes like this, I don't know. But I do believe that they are operating on a different plane of existence and sometimes come into our plane of existence. And whether that's by design or not, we don't know. You know, I always say when it comes to this, when it comes to shadow people, that we're really not going to know who and what exactly they are until we're able to sit down with one and just, like an interview, say, hey, you know, who are you? What are you? You know, why do you appear like this? Why do you show up in our world like this? You know, those sorts of questions. Why do you seem to hang out in the shadows or in the corner of the bedroom at night, or what have you? You know, what is it? You know, what is your goal of being here? What is it you're looking for? What are you trying to do? So that's my take on shadow people and who and what they are, as they're interdimensional beings, and we just really don't know enough about them yet because we're not operating on the same dimension as them. And that's really going to wrap it up for right now. Wow, that really kind of got light here. The lighting was a lot darker with that, I guess. It was kind of strange. But this is where you can find me, of course, MikeRicksecker.com, HauntedRoadMedia.com, the YouTube channel, Haunted Road Media. Go ahead and subscribe to that. Also, Twitter, at Mike Ricksecker, at Haunted Road Media. There's also Society of the Haunted, which has a SocietyOfTheHaunted.com. And there's a Society of the Haunted Twitter, Facebook pages for all of them, Haunted Road Media, Mike Ricksecker. You know, of course, there's also Edge of the Rabbit Hole, and we got so many things going on with Haunted Road Media. These are all the different books. Encounters with the Paranormal, the first one right here, Encounters with the Paranormal, Volume 1, actually has my shadow person story within it, and has the artwork by Adam Tillery that you saw at the very beginning of the presentation. So I really want to thank you for sticking around and watching this presentation on the Haunted Road Media channel. For those of you that are going to be at the Exchange Hotel this weekend for this presentation, for the event, I look forward to seeing you all out there. And yeah, if you haven't yet, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, leave some comments, which would be great as well. Till next time.